He's boasting on something he didn't do. Paul says, don't do that. Don't do that. And in verse 5, he says what appears, if you read it really fast, you think, oh my gosh, look at that. Paul just contradicted himself. In verse 5, he says, each of us must bear our own load. In verse 2, he says, bear one another's burdens. And in verse 5, he says, we got to all bear our own load. He's not talking about the same thing anymore. In verse 5, each one will bear his own load. He's talking about a very specific, very intimate, very definite occurrence of your appearance before God Almighty on the judgments. He's talking about the load that you will lay out to God. He's talking about bearing your deeds before an almighty, holy, omnipotent, omniscient, all you think of, God, who says, what did you do? And here's my load. Here's what I did. That's the load he's talking. That's why he talks about a burden and a load. A burden is a difficulty. Now, I had a man teach me one time, if you see somebody with a monkey on their back, you go take that monkey off of their back, and when they walk around the corner, you shoot the monkey. It took me weeks to figure out what he said. I was like, what? Shoot the monkey, shoot the monkey. What his point was is that you take the trouble that they can't seem to deal with, you take it from them, and then where they're gone from you, you just kill it because it's not your trouble. The only thing I disagree about is that you let the person walk away. And if you walk away, I never know what happened. But see, Paul says, I need to restore you with gentleness. The last question as we close here is, how do I do that? You have to look in verse 22 and following of verse 5. Paul in chapter 5 is talking about walking in the Spirit, which is to be Christ-like, which is what we profess to desire most of all. And he says, this is how you tell the difference. This is what walking in the flesh looks like. And here's what walking in the Spirit looks like. Now that is a sermon in itself, and I shall not preach to you in these last 5 minutes. But I want you to look in verse 22 where he picks up on the fruit of the Spirit. He says, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such thing there is no law. Meaning against such thing there is no, you shouldn't do that. You can be peaceful all the time. You can be loving all the time. You can be joyful all the time. So when you say, and your next thought is, what do I do? Anything that is in those things. What do? I do something that exists in kindness. I do something that exists in goodness. I do something that is faithful. I do something that has self-control attached to it. You know, Jesus does not need you to run out in front of a car and get killed. Jesus does not need you to go 80 miles an hour headlong into a brick wall and just end it. Now, he doesn't need us fired up. We're going to go change the world. Well, I'm not just going to go run out in front of a guy who's got a gun and say, shoot me! Right? I got something to do, so I need self-control. So what I mean is, when you see all these terrible things happen, you don't pack a bag with a bomb and go try to blow up the DNC so that they can't do anything else. I'm going to put a stop to it. Abortion is wrong, so I'm going to go blow up the abortion clinic. What? There's no self-control. There's no common sense there, but there's no self-control there. Do you want to stop abortion? Good. Be controlled about it. Because see, do y'all remember that? Do y'all remember times where you've seen abortion clinic got shot up? Or I remember not too long ago, some abortion guy, I think in Kansas, he comes walking out of church, shot him right in the head. Well, is that loving? Is that peaceful? Was that patient? No. So you see, when I look and say, what do I do? One, I'd be willing to do anything. Because anything less less than that is a sin. I can't say that any other way. To say, and do nothing is a sin. Because you have been called to do something. The second thing is, when you say, I'm willing, what do? I do whatever falls under those fruits. Because I live in the Spirit. I walk in the Spirit. Where do I start? With the person sitting next to you. I got contacted not too long ago. Some trouble, some difficulty in a family that I'm familiar with. And somebody said, what do? I said, you love them. So I just keep doing it. I just keep letting them do this. I said, no. You begin by loving them. We'll figure out the rest once you're doing that. We catch only a glimpse of what we are capable of when we refuse to do those things that He has told us. Every once in a while, we get to do something that's so obvious, so great, that we're like, oh, look what happened. And never, it might happen once in a lifetime. And so to that, a man named Alexander McLaren said this. He said, if our likeness to God does not show itself in trifles, then what is there left for it to show itself in? Because our lives are made up in trifles, in little things is what he means, little nothings. The great things come 3, maybe 4 of them in 70 years. The little things come with every tick of the clock. That means to penetrate your very soul. Every click of a clock is a missed or yet taken up opportunity for you to do something. If you're fussing with your wife, why? If you're fussing with a church member, why? If you have a grievance with anyone, why? If you look with the Pharisee's eyes, thank you, I'm not like him. The only thing I ask you to do is finish that story in your head. Jesus said the man who was the, I don't want to be him, pointed at a poor, sinning, nasty guy. And that guy simply looked at God, beat his chest and said, Father, forgive me. And Jesus said, that man was hurt. God is telling you everything to do. Forgiveness, reconciliation is freedom from the sin that claws at your back when you refuse to be gentle and restorative with those people around you. Know now, God is calling you this moment to do something, to do anything else but what you're doing now. Why not respond? It's the only question left. The scriptures tell us what we're doing wrong, how to not do it wrong, how to do it. The only thing left is, why won't you? Why won't you respond to God? Our hymn of invitation this afternoon is wherever He leads, I'll go. Hymn 361. I want to encourage you and ask you to stand and turn your hymn to 361. This time of invitation is open for anyone, for any reason. If you don't know who Jesus Christ is, if you don't have Him as your Savior, if He is not the Lord of your heart, again, the question remains, why not? You take for granted, we all do, that tomorrow is ours and we can do something to Him. We know nothing about what will happen this afternoon. I saw a man in a nursing home. He was the police chief of the town where the nursing home was. He's in a wheelchair, he can't talk, his head is caved in. He had had a fundraiser for the police department, and the fundraiser was a boxing match. He had his head caved in a boxing match. Don't sit down, don't sit down. There's no reason to sit down. Stand up. Your leg's broken. Stand up. That man thought he was going to get up after that fight, go home, go to bed. You know what? His wife lives alone. His children, no father. He assumed too much. If you don't have Jesus Christ as your Savior, and you're waiting and waiting and waiting, you assume too much. If you feel God calling you to do something, anything, and you don't respond because I'll do that tomorrow, you assume too much. Folks, if you need Christ, if you need prayer, if you need a church home, if you need anything, know that this time here, as we sing in 361, is your time to do anything you would like to do before the church.